Okay, everybody, today we're going to talk a little bit about paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is a word that you've probably heard before, and what it means is that you're taking some research that you're reading and putting it into your own words. And why is it important? It's important because paraphrasing helps us to avoid plagiarism, which we know is academically dishonest, and plagiarism can get you into a lot of trouble later in life. So we want to definitely avoid that. And to do that, we have to learn how to put things that we read into our own words so that we're not taking credit for anyone else's ideas. So two of the most important tips for paraphrasing are first to try your best to understand the passage, because if you don't understand what you're reading, then it's going to be impossible to put it in your own words. The really important things that you need to understand are the basic main ideas of the passage, like who the passage is about, what the passage is about, where, the location that we're talking about, when, the time when it's taking place, and why this might be important or relevant to what you're researching or to your life in general. The other important thing is taking notes while you're looking away from the article. This is the most important thing that I can suggest that you do. If you're looking at something while you're trying to take notes about it, it's really tempting to copy the words exactly as they are on the page. And that copy and paste feature on your iPad or on a word processor is also really tempting. So we don't want to look at the article at all while we're trying to summarize it or paraphrase it. Let's practice together. So the way we're going to do this is to read this article called Thirst, which is from Scholastic Scope, and see if we can paraphrase the most important ideas of the article. Let's start. It was still night in Mozambique, a country in Southeast Africa, but for 13-year-old Natalia, this dark hour was the start of her day. She dragged herself out of bed, a thin straw mat, and dressed quietly. Her 3 younger sisters were still sleeping in the room they all shared. Natalia slipped out of their hut and set off into the darkness. Shaking off sleep, Natalia moved briskly. It was 4:30 a.m., and there was not 1 second to waste. She was beginning a grueling journey, one that would take hours. She would walk about a mile in the dark, through fields of tall grasses where snakes lurked, but she walked without fear. She had been making this trip 2 times a day, 7 days a week, since she was 10 years old. Why? She was not heading to school or to a job or to visit a relative. She was going to fetch the water her family needed to survive. Let's try to paraphrase that passage that we just read. Take a second and see if you can answer the questions without looking at the passage. Who was this about? And what was it about? You might even remember where. When I'm thinking back to what I read, I remember that it's a girl named Natalia. And I remember that she's getting ready to go somewhere, and we found out at the very end that she has to walk a long way to get water for her family. So she is getting ready to get water. It's a long way. And where was it? Let's think about that. I think it was in Mozambique. So now that I have my first ideas, I want to try to think about what the rest of the article might be about. So I'm wondering if they're going to tell us more about the water shortage in Mozambique. And that's something that I might need to take notes on for my PSA. So let's continue reading. For most of us in the United States, getting clean water is as simple as turning on the faucet. You probably don't think twice about taking a long, refreshing shower after soccer practice. You mindlessly brush your teeth, maybe you even leave the water running before bed each night. You have water fights with your friends on hot summer days. The average American uses 176 gallons of water a day. That's enough to fill about 1,900 soda cans. But for more than 660 million people around the world, even 1 sip of clean water is a luxury. This is standing out to me as some facts that we might need about water usage in the United States and how it's different from Mozambique. So let's stop there and try to paraphrase what we just read. So without looking back at the passage, I'm going to try to remember what I read and put it into my own words. The main idea that I remember reading is that Americans don't have to think much about the water that they use. And they use a lot of water, right? So now that I've written my sentence, Americans use a lot of water every day and don't think twice about it, I need to go back and see if I'm leaving anything really important out, or if anything that I have written is actually not paraphrased, is using the same words as what the author used. So going back, I'm seeing that there are a few things that I should probably change about the sentence that I paraphrased. What do you think they are? Let's look closely at the part in the box. What should I change? One thing specifically that I'm noticing is that I used that phrase, don't think twice. That, even just that little phrase, is plagiarized from this little section. So I need to put that into my own words and revise what I wrote. I also know that I might want to think about being more specific in what I'm saying about how much water Americans use. So 176 gallons of water a day, the average American. That's so much. So I think that number is really important. So let's see if we can revise our paraphrase sentence. So I said before that I need to get rid of don't think twice, because that was the exact words of the author. And I also need to take a lot of out and be a little more specific. So let's see. Can we say an average of 176 gallons of water every day? And what can we say here? The Americans use an average of 176 gallons of water every day, and they don't have to think about where it comes from. Now I'm keeping the main ideas that I was talking about before, but it's a lot different from what was originally written in the article, and it also is more specific than it was the first time. So all I would need now is to put a citation at the end of this sentence. And that would go right at the end here. I'm trying to... in parentheses before the period. So I would need to put that in there, and that's what Miss Nolan's video about APA is going to teach you how to do. So to wrap up our discussion about paraphrasing, you need to remember to paraphrase only the most important parts. You don't have to paraphrase all of an article. That would take forever. You're only paraphrasing the parts that are important for your research that you need to keep. Remember also that numbers are okay to keep. You can't use different words to say 176 gallons of water. That's okay. That's a fact. It's not someone's idea or someone's way of saying something specifically that's unique to them. Finally, a really good tip for paraphrasing is to look away while you take notes and then check after to make sure that you have not stolen any words from the original author. And if you do these things, then you should be in great shape to take notes and make sure that your PSA and your letter don't plagiarize any of your research.